So this TikTok influencer got caught trafficking drugs and she got sent to prison. Now, the woman's name is Sandra, and Sandra is 17 when this story starts, and she's living in Guadalajara, Mexico, and Sandra comes from a powerful drug trafficking family. So, as you can imagine, she's surrounded by a lot of drugs and money and guns and power. But here's the thing. Sandra actually isn't interested in any of that. What she really wants is to become an investigative news reporter. So she starts following her dream. She enrolls in a university and she starts studying communications. But then that dream gets destroyed because one day around 1980, she meets this guy. Let's call him Javier. And Sandra thinks Javier is bueno. And Javier also thinks Sandra is bueno. And so they start dating. And a few years pass and now she's in her third year at school. And one day Sandra and Javier get into a huge fight over something. I don't know what. He's a jealous guy, so it's probably have something to do with that. And Javier gets so pissed off that he decides to kidnap Sandra. So he kidnaps her and he takes her to a remote place and he keeps her there for a while and later he releases her. Now, even though Sandra has been released, she's still really scared because Javier is connected to the local drug cartel. And if his jealous ass kidnapped her once, he's likely to do it again. So she decides to flee her new life at the university and go back to Guadalajara, where she knows that she can be protected by her family. And leaving the university, of course, kills her dream of becoming an investigative reporter. So now she's stuck at home, I assume surrounded by members of her powerful drug trafficking family, and over time she gets involved with the whole family drug business, and she joins in and she actually starts to like it. And Sandra, she seems to be a pretty ambitious person, so pretty quickly she decides that she doesn't want to just be a woman in the cartel business. She wants to be the most powerful woman there. So she starts working hard on this, and she learns fast, and she stays disciplined, and she doesn't use any of the drugs herself like a lot of the other people in the business do. And because of that, members inside the cartel start trusting her. So she starts getting better positions in the cartel. Now, here's the thing about Sandra, though. Apparently, a lot of men find her very woe. Specifically, a lot of powerful cartel guys really want to smash with her, and she takes full advantage of that. Like, she starts seducing notorious kingpins. She gets married to the top corrupt law enforcement officials, and she even becomes quite close to El Chapo, the world's most famous drug lord. And with all these connections, Sandra continues to work her way up the Mexican drug trade. And years go by, and it's now the late 1990s, and her life changes again because she meets this guy who everyone calls El Tigre. And El Tigre is a top Colombian drug trafficker with ties to the Colombian cartel. And Sandra thinks El Tigre is bueno, and El Tigre thinks she's really bueno as well. So they start dating, and soon they start doing business together. Now, the Colombian cartels are notorious for producing huge amounts of cocaine, but it can be difficult to move that across the U.S. border because of the security the U.S. border has. Now, the Mexican cartels, on the other hand, they already have the routes and the networks and the infrastructure to move drugs into the U.S. with no problem. And since Sandra now has access to both cartels, she becomes the bridge between the Colombian cartels and the Mexican cartels. And she starts overseeing the movement of a lot of cocaine from the Colombians to the Mexicans. And she becomes responsible for moving lots of drugs across the Pacific into the U.S. And she does this for years. And of course, from all this, Sandra is making tons of money. And she is not afraid to spend it. She buys a couple of luxury homes. She starts building a collection of sports cars, Camaros and Bentleys and Audis and Mercedes. And on top of that, she stacks up hundreds of pieces of jewelry. She ends up owning about 300 pieces of jewelry. Damn, Sandra. So yeah, she is now officially the girl boss of the cocaine trafficking business. But then she runs into a problem. One day in 2001, she sends a shipment of about 9 tons of cocaine on a boat, and that boat ends up getting seized by the Mexican Navy. And because the shipment is massive and it was heading to the US, American feds also get involved, and they all start investigating, and they're able to trace the phone records from some of these traffickers. And those records lead straight to Sandra and Elta. So from here, both Mexican and American feds start monitoring them closely. And that is when the story gets worse for Sandra, because one day in 2002, some members of a rival cartel supposedly they kidnap her teenage son. And if she wants him back, they're demanding that she pay them $5 million. And of course, Sandra panics. I mean, no doubt she does have the money to pay for her son, but I guess she's just scared that even if she does pay it, her son could still get killed. So she calls the police. And when the police arrive, she tells them that her son has been kidnapped and that the kidnappers are demanding $5 million in cash. And the police are like, wait, who are you that the kidnappers are asking for that kind of money? And that's when Sandra realizes that she screwed up. So she tells the officers not to worry about it and that from here she'll handle the negotiations herself. And she does. Eventually, Sandra does negotiate with the kidnappers and she ends up paying them $3 million and she gets her son back. However, the police don't actually let the situation go. They end up running a background check on her, and that is when they're able to connect her to the seized cocaine shipment from a couple of months earlier. So now they know that she's definitely involved in some shady business, and they start digging into her finances. And pretty quickly they discover that she owns over 200 real estate lots, 2 houses, and a salon, which are assets worth far more than she should legally have. So they come up with this theory that she's laundering money for the cartel, and they issue a warrant for her arrest. And then word gets out, and suddenly the whole country is looking for Sandra. So she decides to go on the run, and she starts changing her houses and her cars and her hair color and even her face. She allegedly pays for plastic surgeries to change her appearance so that no one can easily identify her. And 3 years go by, and she's still on the run, and it's starting to look like she's really just good at hiding, and that she might not ever get caught until one day in 2007, Sandra goes out to a local diner to have a cup of coffee, and bam, she gets arrested. Here's her mugshot. And so she ends up getting locked up while she waits on her conviction. And while she's in Mexican jail, she's not your average inmate. Like, she has money and powerful connections. So she ends up getting like 3 maids to help serve her food and serve her alcohol and cigarettes. She even has a doctor who personally comes to give her Botox injections while she's in prison. And anyway, she stays locked up for about 5 years. And in 2012, they conclude that they don't have enough evidence to convict her in Mexico. So they extradite her to the US to be convicted there. And in the US, she ends up taking a plea deal and she's sentenced to 70 months in prison with credit for time already served. Later, she gets out and she gets arrested again for money laundering, and she spends 2 more years in prison. After that, she gets out and she kind of becomes an influencer. Like, she starts a whole ass TikTok account, and now she posts lifestyle content, and she actually has over 400,000 followers on this account. So good for her. I